Greetings, everyone, and thank you for coming to the operator meeting today. I'm Hannah Hickam, but I will not be your host. We've had a new administrative assistant start, Jenny Lehman, and she will be taking over the operator meeting responsibilities going forward. So I'd like to introduce you and so be ready to call the meeting.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. So we can get started. First off, we have an ECMC introduction, which Julie Murphy will be presenting. Take it away, Julie.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Hannah. I just wanted to take a moment to note that as of July 1st, the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission became the Colorado Energy and Carbon Management Commission. We're currently using the acronym ECMC as we all kind of transition from an organization that we were used to calling COGCC into a new world. The additional reason, or the reasons for changing our authority, is the expanded responsibilities to oversee development of gas storage in Colorado, or of deep geothermal, which is authority that we're also sharing on the shallow geothermal with the Division of Water Resources and the State Engineer's Office, another division housed within the Department of Natural Resources. We're continuing to coordinate and collaborate with our partners there on deep geothermal. I think it's important to note that we were required to execute an MOU with DWR, which we have executed around the administration of deep geothermal permits between now and until we adopt rules. The third area of additional responsibility is carbon sequestration. The change in our name and most of the changes in the scope of our authority took place as a result of the legislature adopting Senate Bill 285. There were also some important provisions contained within Senate Bill 16. All of these additional spheres of authority are something that are, in my mind, at least relate to oil and gas development, right? It's how are we using the subsurface of Colorado responsibly to help generate energy. I think that these are important roles and responsibilities, and we'll continue to use our existing talent to usher in regulatory pathways for these technologies. I think it's very complementary to the work that we are already doing. And, as evidence in the private sector, we're seeing a lot of interest from former oil and gas employees and companies in these developing areas as well. I think that we did receive some additional staff hiring capacities to create additional expertise to develop, an appropriate level of understanding in these arenas to complement our work. I think that the go-by that we have is really well developed in our existing oil and gas regs, and we will be working on developing regs for, again, deep geothermal, gas storage, and carbon capture or carbon sequestration in the near future. I would note on the carbon sequestration side, that is something that would require us to achieve primacy from the Environmental Protection Agency for Class 6 wells. And so we will be working first to adopt rules in that space, and then applying to EPA for primacy so that the state of Colorado is in charge of permitting for Class 6 wells. With that, I recognize that we have so complementary to, let me start that sentence over. Complementary to our oil and gas work, these additional areas are similar expertise, similar disciplines. And again, to my point earlier, all about how are we using Colorado's subsurface to generate energy. Last session, we also received an additional 29 FTE for our core oil and gas work. And so we are in the process and have started hiring those positions as well. We would look to the new expertise gained from employees bringing in experience around deep geothermal, carbon sequestration, and gas storage to complement, collaborate, cross-train with our existing staff and successfully integrate these additional roles in that fashion. And so that's kind of the big picture, well, or perhaps more granular operational side of things. We're really looking forward to working with our stakeholders over the next couple of years as we usher in these new regulatory pathways and also stay committed to some of the core work around our organization, which is regulating oil and gas development in Colorado. With that, Jenny, I would turn it back to you and let you all move on with your agenda as I've got to pop to a different meeting.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie. Next up, we have the Form 3/3 update presented by Chris Eisinger. So please take it away, Chris.
Thank you, Jenny. Good morning, everyone. I don't have any substantive updates for the Form 303A. With the exception of the Form 3A, I want to thank all of you for your patience as we continue to work through the process. One of the changes that is coming here very soon that we're working with their developer on is for Rule 704, which is for the Surface Owner Protection Bond financial assurance. We are going to provide an option for operators to submit their Form 3A, even if the Form 3 shows a Surface Owner Protection Bond requirement, but the operator feels that they are exempt based upon one of the criteria for exemption of a Surface Owner Protection Bond. So that will be coming hopefully by the end of this week. We are just sort of finalizing that. Additionally, we have some tweaks to hopefully smooth the process for how existing instruments get allocated to your financial assurance requirements under the new rules. So again, thank you for your patience, and we welcome questions during this meeting or any time in the future to myself, to Debbie Lutz, or to Scott Cuthbertson. So that's all I've got, Jenny. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Next up, we have an SUA requirements update presented by Scott. Scott.
Thanks, Jennifer. So Chris mentioned, we're still working to be as effective as we can be in the process, in our attempts to get information back and forth between the operators and our administrative database. And we are working on some 3A updates to that end. I will tell you that we have also updated the guidance on our surface use bond analysis document. You can go to our website at regulation and then operator guidance, and it's actually at the top of that list because it was just updated this week or maybe late last week. And the purpose of that was to simply acknowledge a couple of things. Chris's team has improved the tool that we use. Jennifer Brainerd on his team, one of our database experts, revised the report that is used to generate the information regarding whether you as an operator are required to have a service use agreement for one of your wells. That report has been updated. The guidance that shows you how to use that report, how to access report and use that report, is the guidance that I'm referring to. And so you can find that at regulation operator guidance. And so I appreciate their work on continuing to make that more elegant. And the other piece of the guidance update was to make it clear that what conditions do not require a service use agreement. So if the operator is a surface owner, if the surface owner is part of the mineral ownership, there's a number of different exclusions that if they are all true for all of your wells, or if one of them are true for all of your wells, then you do not have to have a surface use agreement or a surface bond. And part of what we made clear in the updated guidance is that federal lands and Indian tribal lands are also one of those exclusions. So that's that quick update. You can check that guidance out by going to our website, like I said, and feel free to chat in your questions if you have some.
All right, thank you, Scott. Next up, we have a Form 6B update presented by Diane McCoy. And Diane, let me just get your slides ready here real quick. Okay, Diane, whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. Morning, my name is Diane McCoy, and I'm just going to give a short update on the new Form 6B. If you could just scroll to the next slide, please. So the development of the Form 6B is complete, we think and hope. I'd like to ask a couple operators if you'd be willing to volunteer to test it for us, kind of get a beta testing side done before we release it for everyone. So if you had a 6A already and you know you need to do the annual report for the 6B and you are willing to help us test, I appreciate it. I think we've got everything smoothed out and hopefully the testing goes really well, but it would require, if you do run into errors, you know, grabbing those screenshots, emailing us and working through any problems that may encounter. But if you are open for that, go ahead and email me and we'll get access to the Form 6B for you in web forms, and then we can work on getting those released for everyone. If you go to the next slide, please. Just wanted to share this, kind of give everyone a heads up of what the 6B will look like. At the next operator meeting after we release it for everyone, we'll have a more comprehensive review and an operator guidance document will be released. But just so everyone is aware of what information is going to be collected on the Form 6B, so you can start gathering that, because I know there are a lot of wells that have been designated as out of service and a lot of things are being updated. The first is just some of those questions about where the well is located and what is within 2,000 feet of that well bore, and updating that information as necessary. So if you had it on the 6A and nothing's changed, then you can say yes or no, it is within any of those criteria. Go ahead and review where that well is at, because we know development and it's always changing and you might need to update what is surrounding that well. And then the next is giving a look at how progress is being made. So looking to see if your electric services have been terminated, if you've purged lines or equipment, removed any surface equipment. And for those, it'll be a cell for each row of the well, and it's going to be 3 options to paste into there or type in there, however you want to supply it. And then the options are going to be you've not started, the work is in progress, or the work is completed. And so that gives you guys kind of an idea, so you can start pulling in that data and have it ready, because once the Form 6B is released, we're going to want a pretty quick turnaround to have operators get that submitted to us. By rule, the Form 6B are due annually in March, and we've just been developing a lot of forms and have lots of changes with all our rulemaking. So as soon as we get this one released for all operators to use, we're going to want to, like I said, a quick turnaround. So that's the new information you'll be needing to supply for review of progress on plugging commitments on for your wells that were designated as out of service. And that's all I have. So if you're willing to help test, please email me after the operator meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Diane. Next up, we have in House Bill 23-1242 produced water data requirements presented by Greg Durham. Go ahead and take it away, Greg, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Jenny. Greg Durham here, Environmental Manager. I'm going to try and share my screen. And unfortunately, I did not put my presentation into the new ECMC template. So we're a little bit black and white here today. So as Jenny said, I'm going to talk briefly about the data collection for the House Bill 23-1242, which is the produced water recycling and reuse bill. Gonna just review the statutory language, a few implementation notes as we were trying to figure out how to collect the data that's required, talk about disposal and tracking codes, and then walk through a mock-up of the Form 7W is what I'm calling it at this point, and then show you also the Form 7W data template. So the statute requires, beginning in September 1st, operators will report to the commission the following produced water data, and concurrent with reporting, concurrent reporting with the required production reporting. So the production reporting that is going on in September is what will need to be supplemented with the produced water data that we're going to be collecting. So in September, I believe you will be submitting July production data, and therefore we would expect that the July produced water data is included at that time as well. Recognizing that it's July 11th and we're just releasing sort of the template for putting that data together. We'll have to just work together as we approach that September 1st date. So the required reporting requires the volume of all fresh water used downhole in each well, the volume of all recycled or reused produced water used downhole in each well, and then the volume of all produced water that is produced from the well, and by which method it's disposed, and what the disposal location is. So we currently, already require production reporting to include all fluids, including produced water that is produced from the well. So the new data here really is the disposal method and disposal location for that water. The volume of all produced water that is produced from the well and then recycled or reused at the same oil and gas location, or removed from the oil and gas location for recycling and reuse. So again, this first tranche of reporting is all centered around the well-specific reporting. So as we were trying to figure out how to collect that data, originally we thought that we would be able to simply add a couple of columns to the existing Form 7 production reports. And as we spoke with our developers, what we determined was that we had not only some one-to-many relationships, but also some many-to-many relationships, where you wind up with several options that could apply in a given month to a single well, and then several more options that could apply to those sub-options. So I'll kind of show you what happened there. But because of that, we determined that the Form 7 data template couldn't really easily be modified to accommodate this data collection. And so a more straightforward approach would be to create a second data upload template that stands alone for the produced water reporting. The structure will be really similar to what you're all familiar with and what your systems are set up for reporting on the Form 7. And similar to the Form 7, where you can enter one well on multiple rows if there are different sidetracks, we will also be able to enter one well on multiple rows if there are different water management scenarios. And then we will not change for the purposes of this rule, we will not be changing the Form 7. We want to maintain the continuity for reporting in the existing Form 7. So you will still have a produced water volume to report on the Form 7, and then you'll get into more details on the Form 7W. So the statute requires the water disposal methods as defined by commission rules. And so we reviewed the current water disposal codes, which are used for reporting, and they're fairly limited and fairly broad, and they're not tied specifically to certain rules. And so in order to get a little better granularity on where the water is going, we determined that the sort of most straightforward way to change the water disposal codes would actually be to use what we have today as the commercial disposal, central disposal, on-site pit, et cetera, and then just provide more clarity. In other words, produced water E&P waste can be disposed of at a commercial facility, a commercial well that's class 1 or a commercial well that's class 2. And so we want to know that distinction. We want to know which is, which, if any, water is going down a class 1 well. I think that's fairly rare, but I also know there's some parts of the state where that happens. There are some commercial disposal facilities that don't have a UIC well. So they dispose maybe by evaporation at those facilities. And so those would be a non-UIC commercial facility. And then the central disposal pit or well, that's not super helpful because we want to know which is going down a disposal well versus which is going down an operator-owned disposal pit. So we separated those out as well, central disposal well and central disposal pit. If in reviewing this presentation and this information, if anyone comes up with things that we've missed, like, hey, we're doing this and it's subject to the rules this way, but it doesn't really fall neatly into these boxes, then please reach out to me. This table just sort of describes, again, those same codes that I described before, what they are, description, and then the rule basis for that disposal mechanism. So again, the statute requires disposal as defined by commission rule. And so we pulled directly from the rules right now. Rule 905C is where produced water management is primarily governed. And so that's where we drew from for this list. So just to walk through the Form 7 or 7W, this is a mock-up based on the Form 7. Similar interface to what everyone is used to for the Form 7. Operator information, contact information is the first thing you'll see. And then you'll get into the monthly report of operations. So what we will have is a new data grid for the Form 7W that you can either manually enter data right into the form, or you'll be able to upload a template. So here is essentially the new data grid. These are the new data fields based on the statutory language: freshwater used in the well, recycled, reused water used, produced water that was removed for disposal, the disposal method, the disposal location, and then the produced water that was produced and used for on-site recycling and reuse, and the produced water that was produced and used for off-site recycling and reuse. If you want to manually enter, you'll be able to just add rows and manually enter. If you have a dozen wells, it might be easier just to populate it manually. If you have hundreds of wells, it's going to be easier to use the data download template. And so I'll show you that link in just a minute. This is the operator submit form. So I think my slide may have gotten out of order there. You'll still be able to attach documents. And so now I'm moving on to the data template. So when you click that, you'll get a Excel file just like you do right now with the Form 7. The first tab on the Excel file basically has, very similar to what you're used to. Here's the form number, the reporting month, the reporting year, operator number, a company name. So you'll populate those, and then you'll populate the API number. If you want to report by sidetrack, you can, but you don't have to. For the water reporting, it's by, we'll be tracking it by the API number primarily. So that's where we want to stay. So, and again, you can enter the same well on multiple lines if you have, in order to accommodate sort of the water management scenarios. And then again, here are the same data fields: fresh water used, recycled, reused, produced water for disposal, the disposal method, disposal location, produced water for on-site reuse and recycling, and off-site recycling and reuse. Here's instructions for each of those data fields. So what exactly we're expecting to be entered in those data fields is spelled out here. And then some validation rules where it says maybe 0, maybe blank. These are validation rules that the form will have. So it's pretty much allowing any number to be put in there. This has a QA/QC. Oops, sorry. This has a QA/QC suggestion for the operators that the volumes of water disposed plus on-site and off-site reuse and recycling should be pretty similar to the water volume reported on the Form 7. Some validation checks here, if you enter something in column N, you'll have to enter something in column O. And if you enter something in column O, you'll have to have something in column P for the form to validate. And then this is, I put together some examples. I thought this might be helpful. Those who know me know that I'm colorblind, so I went out on a limb here to use colors to try and communicate. The first color, I've got 3 wells, and this shows that, so this yellow color shows the many-to-many relationships that you could possibly have. So we have water disposed in the course of a reporting month, and some went to commercial and some went to some went to a class 1 commercial and some went to a class 2 commercial, and 2 different commercial facilities were used. So you get sort of the one to many from produced water disposal to the disposal method, and then the many to many where the disposal method could be multiple different wells in a given reporting month. And then you would, if you have a UIC well, it'll have even the commercial class 1 will have a UIC facility ID in our database. And so you would enter that facility ID as the disposal location. And then if water was used for offsite recycling and reuse, you would enter that, and you'd only enter that once for that well, and the others could be 0. The green color here on the Wonder Woman 4 and 5 just show an example of water. Fresh water was used. Oh, shoot, I did it again. Fresh water was used probably in the drilling of Wonder Woman 4, drilling and completion there. And then produced water was pulled from that well and reused on site, likely in the drilling of Wonder Woman 5. And so the water consumption in that one is lower. And then additional water was brought in to this site from the A-Team 9. And so that's where that all of those sources add up to be the recycled or reused water used down in that hole. These blue numbers on the Brady Bunch 11 just show it was entered, the line item was entered twice because there were 2 different types of disposal for water produced from that well. But the fresh water used, maybe there was a workover done in that well or something during the production time frame, and they used fresh water. That was only reported on one line, not both lines. I think the rest of these are fairly straightforward. Hopefully, I think it'll get more confusing for me to continue to talk through them. So I think I'm going to move to the next slide, and then if you want to revisit that in the Q&A, we can go through some more scenarios, or you can digest them once you're able to access the slide on our website. And then I guess the last thing I'll say is this is chapter 1. The statute also has a location reporting parameter. that says beginning January 1st, 2024, an operator will report to the commission quarterly these additional volumes of water, so that we can track water not only from the well by well basis, but then we can start to track the movement of water through locations and, for example, through centralized exploration and waste management facilities, where there may not be a well on site, but there is water moving through that site. And then we can see the water coming on site and moving off site for reuse and for disposal. So I just wanted to add those notes in there as a heads up. So the reporting that's due in January will be required to be filed no later than 45 days after the end of the previous calendar quarter. So that will essentially be February 15th. You will be reporting for Q4 2022. So I wanted to give everyone a heads up that, you know, you'll need to start reviewing that statutory language and building the data collection systems for that. And that is all I have for my presentation today. And again, I'd be happy to revisit those examples, and if folks would like me to revisit those in the Q&A section, and happy to take questions at the end of everyone else's presentations.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. Next up, we have House Bill 22-1348 implementation overview of the Form 46, and this will be presented by Mike Cross and author Arthur Coxwell. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you everyone for participating in today's operator meeting. I'm just here to provide a brief update. As you hopefully all know, in 2022, the legislature passed HB 22-1348, which deals with the enhanced oversight of chemicals used in the oil and gas production process. What the bill requires is operators have to disclose chemicals used in hydraulic fracturing at each of their wells. Unlike Frac Focus, this will be specifically tied to each well within Colorado, and will be able to be accessed on COGCC, and requires all chemicals to be disclosed. Once information is entered into the commission website, the public will be able to go and see on a well by well basis what chemicals are actually used in each well. And what's going to happen is it's going to be done through two forms. The first form will be for the manufacturers of different chemicals. For example, Acme may come in and say, we manufacture Acme fracking fluid A and Acme fracking fluid B. So what they'll do is they'll go in and they'll file a form 46. I believe it's 46A is the manufacturer. And then they'll file the form and it'll say Acme fracking fluid A consists of the following chemicals. That list is not publicly disclosed. That list is available to the commission itself. And we will keep a list of chemicals disclosed in the hydraulic fracturing process throughout the state. The list of overall chemicals throughout the state will be publicly available. That list will also be provided to the legislature as required by HB 22-1348. The second form that's still being figured out by OIT and being produced is specific to each operator. And so what the operators will do is come in and say, we use Acme fracking fluid A in our hydraulic fracturing completions process. And so they'll select from the list in the form, the hydraulic or Acme fracking fluid A, and then that will say, here are the chemicals used. And that will be tied to the different wells to say, here are the fluids used. This is not going to contain any kind of specific amounts of each chemical used. It's not going to contain the process that it's made by to protect proprietary information. But the idea is that this is a little bit more in depth than Frac Focus. It's been pushed for by stakeholders throughout the state to ensure that there are no PFAS being used. And Arthur is going to go through the first form that OIT has prepared and is going into beta testing now, and that is the manufacturer form. As we get ready to talk about it, I just want to take a minute to thank Arthur and OIT for their work in putting these forms together. Again, the manufacturer form is ready to go, and the form for operators is still being coded by OIT and will be out soon. And as a final note, if others would like to beta test as these forms do become available, please reach out to Arthur or myself and let us know, and that will be helpful. So Arthur, please take it away.
Thank you, Mike. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Arthur Kepsel. I'm an environmental specialist with the ECMC. And normally what I would be doing is talking to you about water quality sampling. But today we're going to introduce you to the Form 46, which is our first form to meet the requirements of House Bill 1348. And I'm going to skip forward a few slides because they just cover what Mike just talked about, which was just kind of the introduction to the House Bill 1348. And so the first of the forms we're going to release is, I think we're just calling it the Form 46 right now, and that's going to be the chemical product registration
Arthur?
form.
Sorry, I don't think you're sharing your slides.
Oh, I am not sharing my screen.
Thank you.
Thank you. There we go. So the first of the forms will be the Form 46 chemical product registration form. And the chemical product registration form will be completed by the manufacturer or one of their representatives. And in order to access the Form 46, the manufacturer will have to have a Form 1 and a Form 1A on file, just like any other e-form or web form that the COGCC puts out. Once they have their username and password through the Form 1 process, the Form 46 will be accessible through the eForms quick links on the homepage, as I've kind of shown here on the right. Once you access through that, enter your username and password, just like all our other eForms or web forms. And then once you get to the My Forms homepage, you will want to select Start a New Form. And you'll get the forms that are available in a list, and then select Form 46 File Online on the right side. And you'll be taken to an operator information page, which is quite similar to our other eForms. And you can complete that. And like all our eForms, once you've completed it one time, it should save it for future use. So once you're happy with that and you get your information in there, you'll take that and move along, click next, and move to the actual chemical product registration page. And this is where it gets a little trickier. If we're using a product now prior to 7/31/23, please check the box that I have highlighted on the right there. There is some QA/QC involved in the background for the different times. So if we're using an older one, you can check that box and then click on the Add New to begin a new chemical registration. And then to begin the form, you'll want to enter the trade name, what the manufacturer calls the chemical or what they sell it under, plus the manufacturer. And this is kind of how we're going to help keep our records unique for each chemical product. So once you have your trade name and manufacturer, you can move on to the actual chemical constituents to be added. And you can add chemical constituents either by starting to type in the name on the left side of the screen or by the chemical abstract number on the right. And my first example here was using a name typed name. So I just entered water, and that should bring it up with the CAS number and the name, and you can select that, and then it'll look something like this in your list. And then when you want to add by CAS number, you can just type in the CAS number or cut and paste in the CAS number. And we also will be providing a link. There is a link, well, it's active now. There is a link there that will provide you with a spreadsheet that has all of our cast numbers that we currently accept on that list. And that list is kept up to date every day. So if you click on that link, it will give you the most updated list that we have. And if there's not a cast number listed that you need, please send me the cast number and the chemical constituent name, and I will make sure that we don't have it and add it to the list. And so when we're adding them to the list by cast number, you just put in the cast number and then it will select, hopefully it will come up, and then you can just select it and add it to the list. Once all the chemical constituents have been added to the form, we'll need to check the PFOS/PFOA attestation, which just says that there was no PFOS or PFOA chemicals used in the chemical product. And there also is a QC check. I do have a list of PFOA and PFOS chemicals, and it will show an error message if you did submit one, at least one of those. There'll probably be more chemicals added to it over time. So once your attestation has been checked, please select save and then next down there, and it will take you to the review form page and the signature. When I did this, I did the signature first and then reviewed the form. I'm not sure if I had to do it that way, but that's the way I ended up doing it. So I would suggest signing the form, and then you go back up and click review form, which will then take you to a summary of the information that's been provided that you can review. And then once you've reviewed it, click on close in the lower portion of the review, and it will return you to the completed form. So once you've reviewed it and signed it, you may submit it, and the submission will auto approve it. This is just auto approved. It's not going to be reviewed by staff, since we don't really have a way to tell if the information is all correct or not. So it's up to the manufacturer to make sure the information is correct. So once it's auto approved, it should show up back on your My Forms list. And if you click, there's 3 tabs along the bottom. And if you click on the completed tab, it should show you a list of all the completed Form 46s. You will also receive an auto-generated email with an attachment that will look something like this, which is basically a summary of the information. And then I think that's all I have for you for the Form 46 for now. There'll be more coming as we prepare the Form 46A, which will be the for the operators to fill out for their on-site use. And I think that's it for me.
Hey, Arthur, can I add something to your comments?
Yes.
One issue that's important is for any manufacturer disclosure who will be submitting this information on the Form 46, you will need to establish eForms credentials to log into our system. And to do that, you're going to use the Form 1A to register. We are making some minor tweaks to the Form 1A as we speak that will just make it very, hopefully, clear and easy for a manufacturer or discloser to register and get those eForm credentials. But until you have those login credentials, you will not be able to submit a Form 46. So just be aware of that if you are having a manufacturer or the manufacturer is disclosing it, or another discloser who isn't already registered as an operator with the commission, they will need to establish those credentials. Thanks.
I'll go ahead and move on to the questions in the chat. Let me see. Okay, first up, we have, if an operator submitted an initial Form 3 and received approval, but has since submitted a revised Form 3 before the original 90-day period has ended, will the Form 3A be due from the revised Form 3 approval date, or does the operator still owe on the initial Form 3 amount? The revised Form 3 has a reduced bond amount.
So obviously this is going to be a case-by-case basis, but in general, if your financial assurance amount has changed between the time that you got a Form 3 approved and the 90 days that the assurance is due, especially if the assurance amount is changing, then it really doesn't make sense for us to go through the exercise of accepting assurance and then releasing it. I will say though that and this is happening, this is a new process. So as operators are becoming more familiar with the requirements and as production changes, this has happened a half a dozen times, maybe 9 or 10. And so generally the director is reviewing and approving that subsequent Form 3 in an expedited way, recognizing that there is a compliance deadline for the assurance being due. And if that subsequent Form 3 is approved, then we are not requiring the initial assurance be submitted. We're instead requiring the revised assurance be submitted. I will tell you that we are going to be using some discretion in terms of the due dates for that. This first go round for these initial plans, we are just, instituting a second 90-day requirement. But if an operator, if we found someone just consistently waiting till day 89, submitting a new Form 3, getting a slightly revised financial assurance amount, that may affect our decision-making process and the deadline that the assurance would be due. So in general, the answer to your question today is no, the director will likely review and approve that subsequent Form 3, and you would not be required to submit the initial Form 3 assurance amount. But it's a case-by-case basis, so that's not a pat answer that applies every time.
Thank you, Scott. Next up, we have, what does an operator do if submitting a revised Form 3 and the well data that auto-populates in the Form 3 is not consistent with the well data under that operator's number on the website, i.e. more wells listed in Form 3 than on the website?
So I'll remind everybody, the Form 3 looks at the data on the date that it's created, and that is the information that is now statically maintained by that Form 3. It does not change. If you do something to change the wells that you actually own, you buy or sell wells, or you add wells to an out-of-service list, that reflection, that update in the database will not report back to the Form 3. That Form 3 is looking at a static data set that was created on the date that you created the Form 3. In order to reflect your updated well condition, you will have to initiate a new Form 3. Now, if that's not the scenario that you are experiencing, if you feel like you have initiated a Form 3, and at the time you initiated it, the data on the Form 3 did not correspond to the data that was in our database, I will tell you that I guess send me that form number and a screenshot of the information on our database that you feel like is not consistent, and I'll investigate that. But I will tell you that that's impossible, because the Form 3 pulls from the exact same data tables that are data on the website that displays that information. So I think more than likely there's a timing issue going on, not a data issue. So that would be the response to that.
And I would just add, Scott, that typically, changes are going to be observed at the beginning of each month because that is when the production information for wells updates in our system. So you most likely will see new Form 3 information if you start a new draft at the beginning of a month.
Okay, thank you, guys. Next up is the TNA data on the Form 6B auto-populated, or does that have to be manually entered?
I'll answer that one. It depends on which data field you're looking at. So some of the data will be automatically populated from what was submitted on the Form 6A, like is it within 2,000 feet of X criteria, will pull from what you originally submitted on the Form 6A. But we know conditions can change around the well, things can be built nearby. So just review that and make sure it's still accurate and update as needed. If there is a Form 6 subsequent in process or approved, some data will be pulled from that automatically. But if there is not that, then it's going to be up to the operator to manually supply that data. And the operator will always have to manually supply not started, in progress, or completed for the criteria that's new to the 6B, like have surface lines and equipment been purged, have surface equipment been removed, has electric service been terminated, and some of those other data fields that are new. So the answer for all of those are either it's not started, it's in progress, or it's completed, and those will always be manually entered.
All right, next question. Is there a way to pull a report for all the wells that were submitted on a 6A for a single operator if multiple 6As were submitted?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways to go about this. If you are doing it to look to see what you need to supply on the 6B, when you create a Form 6B under an operator number, there's a download feature within the form that will give you the template to start of what data needs to be uploaded and imported to our database. So it pulls all information from 6As that have been submitted for that operator number. And so once you've created the 6B, you get that download and it pulls in that data automatically. If you're just looking to check to see for an operator number, you can always use our website, the data search feature, and then look for that operator. And there's a well designation criteria, so just choose out of service. And then you download that. Probably want to change the records from that 100 to a higher number, depending on how many wells had been designated as out of service for that operator number. And that data can be exported to Excel from that search feature on our website.
Thank you. Next question. What type of guidance will be provided for water systems which have previously been encouraged for recycling?
So that question is for me. However, I honestly don't understand what's being asked there. I see that Christine, who posed that question, has dropped off, but if anyone else from Caris is on the line and can provide some clarity as to what's being asked there, that would be great.
Okay, next question then. What is the new code for on-lease disposal via operator-owned Class 1 or 2 UIC well?
So that question is for me. That's CW would be the code for that.
All right, the next question. Can you confirm that if, for example, freshwater used downhole in a treatment has been captured in a Form 5A completed interval report, it also must be reported in the Form 7W?
Yes, that's correct.
When does Form 46 requirement go into effect?
I'm happy to take that one. And so it's a little bit of a complicated answer. So moving forward, by July 31st, 2023, manufacturers are supposed to submit the Form 46 for chemicals that are manufactured for use in the completions process. The statute also specifically says that if a chemical is being used prior to July 31st, 2023, that needs to be filed at least 30 days before that effective date, which is the range we're in now. Obviously, as the Form 46 has just been completed and we're beta testing now, for existing chemicals, that needs to happen as soon as possible once that begins.
Thank you. Sorry, I skipped one question before that one. The Form 7 will now just have water produced with no disposal code, and the disposal of the produced water moves to the 7W. The 7W is filed quarterly.
So three-part question there. So the disposal code field will remain on the Form 7. We don't want to make changes to that form since, a lot of people are keyed up on that template. We don't want to make the changes. The data may on the Form 7 it may remain. We'll strip a business rule there. So the actual disposal code will be tracked on the Form 7W. Because, and here's some explanation of that. So on the Form 7, it's tracking all water produced, the total water volume produced from the well. On the Form 7W, that's being split up between the water that is produced and sent to disposal versus the water that is produced and sent for recycling, either on-site or off-site. And so you can think of it as those numbers should, the amount reported on the Form 7W that is sent to disposal plus the on-site recycling plus the off-site recycling would equal the total volume produced from the well on the Form 7. And then the last question, the filing of the Form 7W is monthly concurrent with production reporting.
Okay.
And thanks for returning to that question, Jenny.
Yep, sorry, I skipped it initially. Last question here. Is there an estimated date of when the Form 3C will be available?
We're hoping to have it by August, and we'll tentatively say early August, and hopefully at the next operator meeting we'll be daylighting that. For those that aren't aware, the Form 3C will be the form to request release of a bond.
Okay, perfect. We'll give folks some time to chat in any other questions. We have the dates for the next upcoming operators meetings posted here. We'll leave these up for you for a second while folks chat in any other questions. Also, if you wanted to be added to the operator email list, here is my email, jennifer.lehman@state.co.us.
Looks like we're good. Thank you very much for hosting, Jennifer. Thanks everybody for your participation.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.